Okay, guys, welcome back to another edition, another episode of Rotten Reviews. Today I'm going to take a look at Stealth 2005. Um, who's in it? Jessica Biel. Um, Everybody else, well, Jamie Foxx, kind of forgettable. In fact, it's hard for me to remember who's in it. The premise of the movie is that it involves a high-tech stealth fighter with artificial intelligence, sort of like a Top Gun meets HAL 9000. This movie has a 12% on the tomato meter and a 40% audience score. It pretty much deserves this. I might move that audience score up to a more fair, like 45%, not quite 50%, because the first time I saw this on home video, I was entertained. I was also disappointed that it couldn't have been better. I found the premise entertaining, although I found the conspiracy parts of it, in the background to be the most disappointing part, not fleshed out. Other people have a lot more nitpicks with it. A lot of people love to slam this film. You hear it bagged on everywhere you go online. I'm not one of those people. I wouldn't call it a guilty pleasure because I'd have to keep my head down and not admit this to anybody. But I actually enjoyed it the first time I watched it. I thought it didn't have enough backstory fleshed out. I thought it didn't have enough of the drama fleshed out, the conspiracy stuff going on in the background. Um, the action was passable. People want to compare this to Top Gun. I say it's Top Gun meets HAL 9000 because you have the same thing going on, a computer AI that goes wrong and causes people's deaths. The plot of the movie is to stop this computer AI from causing even more deaths and catastrophe, to keep it from possibly starting World War III. It's a nice premise. I like where it was going, but yet it just disappointed. It didn't get you into it like it should have. It felt like the running time was also too short. That I think is a pacing problem because I don't think the movie was too short. I just think it feels too short for some reason. Let's get right into the reviews on this. 5 stars from September 24th, 2019. Speed, aircraft, and technology. It's simply perfect and funny. No, it's not perfect. If you just want to see a high-tech plane fly around and do unbelievable things, okay. I'd say again, this is 2 stars, 2.5 stars for me. I'm saying peaking at 2.5 stars at points, but largely being 2 star because everything it tried to do interested me, but yet it wasn't done quite well enough to be not disappointing. I just get a disappointing feeling from it, but it doesn't rub me so wrong that I need to bag on it all day. Other people, it really rubbed them the wrong way. 3 stars. Critics were a bit too harsh on this movie. Audience members in IMDb too, for that matter. The plot is preposterous, yes, and they could have executed the Top Gun times 2001 A Space Odyssey concept better, and there's not a whole lot of breathing room once the plot really gets going. Read, the action sequences don't let you catch your breath. But the performances of the cast, the dynamic between the three leads, and the exhilarating, I'll bet overwhelming action make Stealth a passable popcorn thriller. I largely agree with all that, but I don't think it rises to 3 stars. I think it really drags down when it comes to Jamie Foxx's character and how he's like a ladies' man, a romancer, and he's got this minor subplot where he's trying to get a girlfriend, a foreign girlfriend. And I think that drags the pace of this down and wastes time. To me, it's wasted footage because it doesn't characterize Jamie Foxx in a way that makes his death more impactful. It could have been done differently. That footage could have been used better to characterize him more sympathetically so that when he died, we felt something. We don't really feel anything when he dies, and the movie needed that to happen to drag us into the later parts of this. It was a fail. And I think that's largely because the way they characterized Jamie Foxx. He's a great actor, but they didn't use him right. He wasn't scripted right. And to me, his characterization, again, it comes off like a wasted opportunity. But yeah, the action certainly over the top. It's implausible. I agree with that. It's preposterous. That's the correct word. You have no sense of distance or fuel consumption or pilot error in this movie. It's like comic booky in that way. Pilots do things that a real pilot wouldn't do. The plane is presented as a super high-tech, almost a fantasy, like a Firefox type of plane, you know, that far ahead of its time. And yet, certain things needed to happen in the movie. They needed to feel like they needed to be elements of tension. For example, fuel consumption is a straight up plot device to be used here for tension, and yet there's no sense of real fuel consumption in this movie. At one point, the protagonist blows up a giant high atmosphere fueling station. I thought the concept of that was cool. The idea to go into that scene was cool. I liked it. However, the idea that fuel consumption was, you know, some plot point that kept us on the edge of our seat if the fuel was going to run out. Later in the movie, the plot just completely disregards any sense of fuel consumption, and you have the plane flying from some place in the South Pacific all the way to Alaska. Really? Stuff like that is just like it pulls you out of the immersion. Let's continue. 1 star. Holy crap, this was just awful. How does Jessica Biel keep getting work after this movie? Well, in this movie, they just used Jessica Biel as like eye candy. The movie feels like they wanted to use her as more of a romantic subplot, but it never really goes far enough to give us that. It just kind of teases her, and it makes sure to show her in her quarters on the ship, you know, to show her ample curves and whatnot. So it's definitely using her for eye candy, yet it doesn't move the plot along in any way. You could have replaced her character with anybody else. You could have replaced her from Goose out of Top Gun. She's just unused as anything but eye candy, even though the final act of the movie, the plot revolves around rescuing her from the North Koreans. You know, we don't get a sense that we sympathize with her beyond a love interest that wasn't developed properly. It's just like, it's disappointing. And you know, personally, okay, it's not PC, but if you want to use Jessica Biel as eye candy, it's disappointing in that regard too. They should have done more with that, if you know what I mean. But anyway, let's move on. 1.5 stars. So does the jet learn to love? I don't know if that's a theme in it. If it was, it fails. It kind of has like the HAL 9000 thing. This is supposed to be an AI to carry out all this precise, you know, stuff, to operate this precise machinery that humans can't do, and yet it goes rogue. Okay, fine, but then later in the movie, the CGI becomes almost like a character and a friend of the pilot. He was earlier a villain. You know, the CGI was earlier portrayed as like a villain or an antagonist, but no, the AI had nothing really to do with the conspiracy angle of this film. The AI was just simply misguided, without all the facts, so to speak, and later he became the friend of the protagonist. Again, the movie suffers because on one hand it has like a bad guy that's a military officer and it's, you know, part of the conspiracy plot, and then the AI is part of the bad guy stuff going on, but then later the AI is not and he's one of the good guys. That was the wrong direction. I thought that this would have been far more interesting if the AI had actually been more of an evil character, and perhaps get rid of the military officer early on and have the AI pick up the mantle and be actually evil, but they didn't go that route, and it comes off as kind of like you don't know who the bad guy is supposed to be. Kind of disappointing again. 2 stars. This suited me because it's full of cheese, and as I'm a moron like my father and his father before him, a film with virtually no plot and has loads of shooting and explosions and requires no intelligence to process the script is my kind of mindless entertainment. Yeah, it's very mindless. At the end, the AI takes the pilot to this remote Alaskan base. Never mind the implausibility of how did they have the fuel to get there. Never mind the passage of time that's hand waved away. He arrives there and kind of crashes in a snowstorm. Of course, he walks away without a scratch, right? I mean, it's a lot of this is just over the top comic book type stuff, but it doesn't work. because this isn't really a comic book movie. 4 stars. And once again, a movie I really enjoyed that the critics trashed. In this case, they are clueless to understand anything about AI. Guess being a software engineer for over 30 years gives me a different insight and perspective. Well, if this is a software engineer trying to say that the AI in the movie was done correctly, okay, maybe. But what about the rest of the movie? How does it fit in with the rest of the movie? The rest of the plot's nonsensical. Yeah, sure, the AI, great. I like the concept too, but this isn't the whole movie. This is just one little piece, one cog in this machine, and the overall machine is crap. 2.5 stars. Stealth is a high-octane film featuring big stars, Jamie Foxx, fresh off his Oscar win, Jessica Biel, and a slew of fighter jets and technology, and yet the film is barely remembered. Let me stop here and interrupt this review. I'm thinking that if they had Nicolas Cage as the main character instead of whoever he is. See, he's forgettable. I mean, I know his face. I've seen him in other movies, but to me, he's bland and forgettable. This feels like a movie that needed Nicolas Cage. It needed it for name recognition. It needed some crazy, zany acting. It needed somebody that could do something implausible and ham it up at the same time. And that's like, this reviewer is saying that this film is barely remembered. If they had cast Nick Cage as the main character, this wouldn't be barely remembered. It might be so bad it's good, but it wouldn't be forgotten about. It would be a lot less boring. So my vote is that they should have put Nicolas Cage as the lead in this. Sorry, guys, that's my feeling. Why? It is so because one of the cardinal rules of movie making is you mustn't bore the audience, and this film, despite all the factors, is boring, overlong, disjointed, and rarely compelling. Stealth has the capacity to put viewers into a catatonic state, but it's probably too much to hope that the film will slip into and out of multiplexes. Again, they're saying it's largely boring and forgettable, and it seems too long. No, I think it actually seemed too short because it rushed a lot of things. It wasted footage on characterizing things that didn't need to be, and then it rushed through parts that were actually more compelling. To me, that's the way it felt. 3.5 stars. The first half was meh, but the second act made the movie. Great scenes, generic story, and bad script. 2 stars. It's hard to say which is worse, the CGI or the script, or the performances, or the characters, or the soundtrack. Wait, no, it's definitely the soundtrack. That's the absolute dregs. At least the whole thing glides along easily, if mindlessly enough. It may eventually crash and burn, and the ride itself may be turbulent, but the pain is mild because it's so numbingly dumb. I'll largely agree with that, except I thought I kind of liked the way the AI played music in the later parts of it. I thought that was pretty cool, but they played it the wrong way. It wasn't the right kind of music, and it didn't fit with what was going on. They should have done that at different parts. It would have felt more like a Top Gun type thing if they had used that aspect of that playing music from the AI differently, if they had done it smarter. I liked that, but otherwise, yeah, I agree with everything else. It was absolutely disappointing. 3 stars. Stealth flew onto our screens at Mach 4, but the film did little than make ears pop. Loud and outlandish, the film lends ideas from many other movies like Top Gun and Short Circuit. The story jumps between characters and provides little attachment to either of them. I was hoping to develop admiration for this very cool robot jet, and just as it was building up to it, man and machine become friends. It's taken away in an anticlimactic battle that lasts possibly a minute. It lasts possibly a minute. I agree with that. He's saying, the main character, the protagonist, becomes friends with the AI at the end. It kind of deflates a lot of what it was building up to. Again, this has at least 2 villains in it. And both of them are eliminated too early. You don't go anywhere with them. 4.5 stars. Absolutely awesome. Excellent special effects, acting, and plot. No, and it's way too late to be part of the marketing team, I'm afraid. 4 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed it. An interesting, exciting, and unpredictable sci-fi action thriller. Excellent acting, excellent plot, excellent execution, and excellent special effects. Wow. They're living in an alternate world, like I've said before in other reviews. They're living in a world in which, for example, Independence Day the second movie, whatever its subtitle was. In their world, that movie was even better than the first Independence Day. It's not my world. 1 star. Cohen is more of a Michael Bay filmmaker than a Nolan. This may sound like a harsh comment, but I'll explain. This is a film that robs you of even emotional connection with its tiresome lack of direction. Agreed. Bay struggles to extract actor performance, much like Cohen. This could have been a guilty film, but at no point does the film attempt to use the concept. The rogue AI is the heart of the film, and at no moment do you feel that it is the villain. The trailer points at this, but you watch the film, okay, yeah, exactly what I said. The AI, it's a fascinating concept that this will be the villain, and it never goes there. In fact, it turns out it was just didn't have all the facts, and he's one of the good guys. 3 stars. Not a bad film, but the plot elements, while interesting, are not well executed, which is sad. Could have been more esoteric in relation to dealing with artificial intelligence and the moral implications to the military dealing with self-aware machines and whether they are sentient beings with rights or not. There's another thing along that AI plot that kind of rubbed me the wrong way with this movie. The programmers of the AI, there's a subplot in which the programmers are kind of characters that are called upon to try to fix the AI, what has gone wrong with it. They're shown as having turned the Seattle Space Needle into their private residence or hangout pad or whatnot. That's a little bit corny and off the top. It came across like almost a comic. You would see this in a comic book movie, an alternate universe comic book movie. It didn't fit in with what was going on, and it was kind of off-putting, but that's just an aside from me. 2.5 stars. It's good movie to watch. 2.5 stars. Slow build-up, kind of long. The action picks up nicely in the second half through the end. Well, yeah, there's action at the end, but you're not built up to it in a way that it makes it feel satisfying. It feels disappointing. 3 stars. A rubbish and highly improbable film made cool by the soundtrack. It introduced me to Institute's Bulletproof Skin, which has joined RATM Bomb Track and Okay, so this person saying that he was impressed with the music that the AI was playing and it introduced him to music that he liked. Okay, that's good. Again, I didn't think that was a bad part of what was going on. It just wasn't used to its effect. It wasn't used smartly. If you can embrace a rather large dose of the suspension of disbelief and ignore the crass deployment of Jessica Biel for eye candy, then this is like Top Gun for the quantum computing generation with fewer homoerotic overtones and more chauvinism. That's reading way too much into it. I agree Jessica Biel was just the eye candy, but again, underutilized even as eye candy. Top Gun, people make this comparison, but no, Top Gun is got a whole subplot with Maverick and his girlfriend and etc. And this is just the pilots are basically very superficial. They're not characterized in a way that would make us feel anything for them. It comes across as comic booky shallow. 5 stars. This movie is underrated, not the best, but still a good movie. Not drawn out too long, not too short. They wish they made a sequel. There may be a C or D movie sequel for all I know. I don't want to see it. 2 stars. Meh. Top Gun wannabe about 3 elite pilots, Josh Lucas, Jessica Biel, and Jamie Foxx. Thank you for saying his name is Josh Lucas. To me, he's very forgettable in every movie he's been in. Disposable, so to speak. Flying a new model stealth fighter along with a new unmanned stealth fighter that operates off its own AI. As with most stories about artificial intelligence, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Demon Seed, Electric Dreams, etc., things do not go well, and the intelligent stealth fighter goes haywire, and the 3 elite pilots must stop it. The story is pretty dumb and predictable, which is surprising since the script, okay, I don't even want to know who wrote the script, but they failed. 1.5 stars. 3 pilots fly a top secret stealth fighter in this predictable action yarn. I disagree, it was predictable. I wasn't expecting it to be so disappointing, having not seen reviews before I watched it. 2 stars. Any film that uses the American Air Force gets panned for copying Top Gun. Well, it didn't use the American Air Force, it used the Navy, but it's interchangeable in this boring movie, that's for sure. The film is pretty poor stuff, though, very boring, and the plot didn't use its main story properly and dragged out a rescue mission for its final act. The action was okay, but nothing that stands out, really. The effects were okay for its year. I didn't care much for the cast, especially after they killed off the only decent actor early on. Yeah, that was a mistake. As quickly as as they had wasted a lot of footage characterizing Jamie Foxx, and they just killed him right off before we even figured out how to get in touch with his character. Um, a complete fail. Half a star. This movie was incomprehensibly awful, and for a film with such low expectations, that's saying something. 1 star. Final line. We are two, and two is a prime number, so we are lucky. You are both lucky if you skip this movie. That sounds like something that AI would say, some corny bad writing. 2 stars, reasonable action-packed film, could have been better. 4 stars, great action movie, everyone should see it. Probably my 10th time watching it all the way through. Go Navy. Okay, maybe after your 100th time of Top Gun you had to switch to this, but you switched down pretty hard. You fell down the ladder quite a few rungs. Ouch. 1.5 stars. True to its word, I did not see this crap coming. 5 stars. I love the action fight scenes between the fighter pilots. Great movie. Half a star. It sucked then and it sucks now. Next. Now we're in 2015 reviews. So these reviews are 10 years after the fact, and people still say it sucked. 4 stars. It's not the greatest film on the planet. The special effects aren't as good when compared to newer movies, and it is predictable. However, I still find it an enjoyable movie. Well, I found it enjoyable the first time watching it, but I didn't pay to see it, and I wouldn't watch it twice. 1.5 stars. Completely unbelievable. It is inconceivable that a pilot would hop in a jet with no support personnel, not knowing the status of the jet, its armaments and fuel levels, and just go fly it. Preposterous, yet entertaining movie. Yeah, it's one of those suspension of disbelief things that the movie just throws right out the window. Yeah, pilots wouldn't act like that. You don't just jump in some broke dick plane and just like fly off across the ocean in it. It's completely preposterous was the word. 1.5 stars. Incredibly stupid with an outstanding amount of plot holes. This is aircraft porn and nothing more. Yeah, you could say that. It's like fantasy aircraft porn. 1 star. Spoiler alert. They killed off Jamie Foxx in the middle of the movie. Very disappointing. 5 stars. Great concept with enjoyable flying scenes and some great background music. 5 stars. The most underrated and underappreciated movie in history. It did not deserve the kind of treatment it got from critics. This is an exciting, well-made action flick with a good cast, good acting, great music, great action scenes, along with an interesting story. This is a great film. Yes, and you were part of the production crew, and you just don't want to admit to your family that it sucked. But sometimes you work on a film that sucks. Get over it. 4 stars. It has a pretty poor first act, but the rest of the movie is pretty good, and it takes AI in a direction you don't see too often. Fun action throughout, though. 73%. No, we've seen AI go in this direction like countless times in Hollywood movies and in novels and in children's cartoons and in TV shows. No, please, please. This is the definition of cliche, at least in regards to the AI. 5 stars. Can't understand why the critics slated this so much. I loved it. Don't want to ruin the plot, but Jessica Biel would make a great Lara Croft in any future Tomb Raider movie, and you'll see why if you watch this. Well, she's perhaps a little bit too curvy for Lara Croft in some regards. If you're comparing her to the video game Lara Croft. Lara Croft, she'd have to be skinnier with less curves in certain regions, if you know what I mean. But anyway, 1 star. Throw science out the window and the idea of using Spec Ops ground forces for all the missions these pilots go on, yet one will still wonder why these pilots even exist. Yeah, it's just like comic book logic on that. 2 stars, pretty bad movie. Not that great of special effects, weak storyline, clear combination of Top Gun and 2001: A Space Odyssey, and not very good performances. Yeah, I'll largely agree. 1.5 stars. Despite its fast pace and mostly impressive special effects, the movie fails miserably due to the fact that it tries to say something about drone warfare, but the story seems set in a world where a lightning bolt can change a computer's programming. Let me find out if a lightning bolt will turn my PlayStation into an Xbox. Somehow I doubt it. That on top of bland characters make this mostly avoidable, as it's too silly to take seriously despite it wanting you to think otherwise. Yeah, it's got comic book logic, but it expects you to take it dramatically and seriously, and it didn't work out. Yes, that's a plot point the reviewer brings up. A lightning strike actually causes the AI to go rogue. In 2001, the technical explanation of what happened to Hal was a lot better. This is just comic book logic straight up. It could work in an MCU movie, but it doesn't work here. 1 star. Stealth had a trailer which made it look like a film with a great quantity of aviation action sequences, and that seemed cool. But it was largely critically panned, and so I had to look into it and determine why that was. Stealth kicks off by showing off its most high-quality element, its impressive visual effects. It uses CGI to create some awesome aviation sequences interspersed with plenty of explosions and well-shot action. Soon after, it shows just what its fatal flaws are. Well, you know, if you actually pull up the DVD or the Blu-ray and you actually go through at a high speed, like you scan through thumbnail size to find out how much, what percentage-wise amount of the film has this CGI action between the fighter jets, it's actually a very small amount. Like if you just scan through this really fast, you would think that it wasn't an action movie at all. So yeah, it's got some serious issues with what the trailers promised and what the marketing promised and what it actually delivered in that regard. A lot of wasted footage on Jamie Foxx's character trying to pick up girls, for example. So there we have it, 40%, and I think like 30 to 35% is fair. Yeah, watch it once. It's kind of like, you know, a more technically proficient attempt to make Firefox. I did a rotten review on Firefox. Now, Firefox delved a lot more into the spy thriller, kind of more of a James Bondy type feel to it. This one is more, taking the concept of a fantasy jet and trying to turn it into 2001: Space Odyssey using that theme. It failed. It fails worse than Firefox, in my opinion, although people at least got better technical action sequences out of this. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Nobody's mind is going to be changed, no matter how many times they bag on this. It will have its fans, I guess. I will see you on the next Rotten Review.